This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
The rabbit hole is hard to see when you're approaching its edges. Not until we fall deep do we realize there is nothing around to arrest the fall. We are left to drop like a stone, never knowing when the bottom will emerge from the darkness. The fall down the hole is never a straight drop. Many times you hit the edges and possibly slow the descent. But as the momentum picks up, the hard crash is an inevitability. When you finally reach the bottom and look up, there are two possibilities. You either hope you die, feeling resigned to your fate, or that hope allows you to climb that much harder. The ascent from the bottom builds your character so that by the time you make it to the top, you are not the same person that fell down the hole. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Felice, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming suffering or overcoming adversity, then we're for you, because that's what we do here, and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content, and now you can join. Follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to. On this episode of the Suffering Podcast, another California boy. I love it. I love it. I love it because you're tanned and we're starting to get paler and paler as the winter comes in. And that's Anthony Autry to talk about the suffering of discipline. Now, Anthony, your path to getting out of that hole all comes from your discipline, and I love it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as retired police, and we certainly don't trust anybody as podcasters, but we do trust Toyota of Hackensack. So go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car. They're great guys over there. So, Anthony, each week we take a question from our audience. This question comes from Taylor5727. Why is it important to pass on what you learned? I see you out there, I look at your Instagram, I look at your videos, and you're always imparting some knowledge. And I can tell when you're saying it from your heart. But it's got to have some importance to you. You just don't talk to hear yourself talk. So do you have any idea what that is?
God has given me quite a testimony. And so I've had quite my share of suffering and pain. And a lot of it, all of it was self-inflicted. And so I believe just by doing what I'm doing today, passing on my testimony, sharing with everybody, if I can just help anybody from going down the same roads I've gone down, help anybody get out of addiction that I had suffered from for a long time, it's just all worth it, because it's really not necessary. You know, it took me a long time to figure out how long. It just wasn't necessary. So, I mean, if I can just help anybody, just one person, it's all worth it. You know?
That's it. It's just that one person. It's one person with the ears open and the heart open enough to hear you.
Absolutely.
That's it. I'm on a similar page with you. I'd like to fight for a different answer, but I do like that one person, because it's my debt that I owe. I owe that debt because people came into my life at just the right time and lifted me up when I really needed it the most. Here's the secondary benefit of that. The secondary benefit is when I reach somebody and their ears finally open and you see that light bulb go off in their eyes, that is the greatest feeling ever.
So true. 100%. I feel like I get more out of it sometimes than they do.
Right. So it's not totally selfless. I don't go into it with selfish motives.
No.
But when you hit that note.
Beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. It's a symphony when you hit that note.
100%.
So Taylor5727, thank you for sending that question in. Keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. 5.5 hour plane ride, 5 hours, 40 minutes. You come in, you had some chances to think about a lot of the stuff that you wanted to talk about here, and I'm going to throw it because we're not even going to talk about we're going to talk about your past.
Let's do it.
I want to know where you grew up, and we just had a conversation off air that I could probably spend this whole podcast on, because your father met Elvis, and I'm very jealous of that, but God bless him. But I want to know where you grew up, how you grew up, what the environment was like.
I was born and raised Pacific Palisades, which is close to Brentwood, Santa Monica. It's an upper middle class neighborhood. And so I was a standard family. Everything was really good. Never saw my parents fight or anything. We used to do family vacations. We would go to Mammoth, go snow skiing. We had a boat out in Lake Havasu. We would go out there. So it was very fortunate.
Lake Havasu. I was just by Lake Havasu. That's where the London Bridge is. That's I drove right past it. I'm like, I know where, and I was saying it wrong the entire time. Lake Havasu. Okay.
Yeah. So seemed like it was just a very normal upper middle class upbringing. I played sports. Again, never really saw any problems with my parents. Had a younger brother that was 3 years younger than me, and just grew up playing sports, doing normal kid stuff. Got into martial arts. My father got us into Kempo. I think I was 3.5 is when I started. And so just normal playing sports, was going to private schools. And I was...
Your father seems to be hitting all these marks. Like there's all these marks that every father wants to hit with their child. You try not to fight in front of the kids because you know that's going to affect them growing up. You try to get them involved in sports because you realize there's value to sports other than athletics. He puts you into martial arts, which is going to give you that discipline.
Right.
Can I ask you this? It's kind of a weird question.
Sure.
Your mother or your father, how did they grow up? Did they grow up in a good household, bad household?
My father's father wasn't around very much. He had some issues, so he was gone. He's actually was born in New York. A lot of my family is in Buffalo. We're Sicilian. And so, but he grew up in Los Angeles. My grandmother remarried George Autry, who is Gene Autry's cousin.
I'm glad you said it because somebody was going to ask that question. Without a doubt, somebody was going to ask that question. You get any of that Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer money?
Absolutely not. So if somebody's out there, I could use some of that, you know. But also, it was not a very healthy environment for my father. So he played sports, did really good in football. He was dating a cheerleader that was a year older. She ended up getting pregnant when he was like 17. So he had his first kid at 17, second at 19, and third by the time he was 21.
Oof.
So he was looking to go to college for football, but immediately had to start working, carried 2 jobs, did the family thing, and then about the time he was 26, they ended up separating.
Well, at least he manned up and he did what he was tasked to do. Hey, listen, you're going to do that? You better own up to it.
Right.
So that's a good thing.
He's never had a problem manning up to things. Yeah.
But the reason I asked that is because he's hitting all these marks. You're telling me all these things that he did for you, and I'm assuming he did it for his brother, your younger brother?
Yes, sir.
Did it all that stuff, and he's doing everything right, and he's doing everything to give you the opportunities maybe he didn't have. And I'm interested to where this is going. I just wanted to paint that picture.
Oh, it's good. That's great. Yes, he's always been there throughout my life, and still is there today. And so we still have a very close relationship today.
So when did you start straying from that disciplined lifestyle? Like, was it middle school? Was it high school?
It was about middle school. So mother comes from the South. She comes from a very, has about 6 siblings and, Southern hospitality. So she's a, Southern
pleaser.
Yeah, she's wonderful. And, so it was actually Christmas Eve. I was about 7 years old. Brother was about a few years younger. Christmas Eve, my parents came knocking on my door. I was jumping on the bed, and, they came in, said that they were going to get a divorce. And I guess I apparently laughed at them. I don't recall this, but laughed at them. Wasn't really sure that they were serious. And then in the morning time, my father was actually gone. So I remember going downstairs. Mom was by the Christmas tree, and she was kind of sitting there, kind of hunched over. Went over and kind of put my arm on her, was, supporting her. And then my brother came down. I remember this vividly. He came down and like grab a hold of my leg, and it was just like a real moment of reality struck right then.
What was the reasoning?
This was the early 90s, and so my father owned a construction company, had about 60 employees. He had made it through the previous housing crash, which was about 20 years prior. then there was one there in the late 80s, early 90s, another housing crash. We had a bunch of houses on the market, and bank took over a few houses, so there's a lot of financial restraints that caused some issues within the relationship with my mother and him. And for whatever reason, they both regret that choice. I think if there was one thing they both could have done differently, they would have not done what they did.
So it appears like everything on the surface of the pond is nice and cool and
Right.
serene, but they're underneath the water. They're a duck in the pond. Their feet are going a million miles an hour.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, and this is what I have a lot of respect for, is they never outwardly appeared to show that to you. You didn't even take it serious when they said they're getting a divorce.
Yeah.
So that's actually that's my hat's off to your parents for having the fortitude to have, because it's painful going through that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it had to affect them personally,
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying their best to co-parent and be good father and mother to their children. And so they go their separate ways. You're
Correct.
7 years old. Now all of a
Correct.
sudden, this guy who is in your life, sounds like he was a good dad, is not around as much.
Correct. Not as much. He wasn't staying there, but he would come pick us up a few days a week to take us to school. He was still present at all the sporting games. He'd come, take us to the park to practice baseball. So he was still present, just wasn't there in the house. That point in time, getting a little bit older, 8, 9, I kind of used that as an excuse to get into trouble. So through those years, 7 to 10, I was getting kicked out of all the private schools. So about 10 years old, I then started going to public schools. And the fifth grade then is when I first started smoked pot, smoked weed, and was drinking alcohol.
Thought you were cool doing
Thought
it, right?
I was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was real cool.
I'm seeing that now. I got a 15-year-old. And I know some of the kids that are in his grade are experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they think they're so cool. And it's all fun and games until something grabs you that you don't want it to be you don't want to be grabbed by.
Yeah.
So it was just weed, drinking alcohol, parties, between 10 and 15.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So between 10 and 15, it escalated pretty quickly. So by the time I was 15, had already moved in through the pharmaceuticals to the psychedelics, had done cocaine a little bit. Through those years, I think I was maybe like 13, and one of my friend's older brothers had overdosed from heroin. So I had stayed away from like the heroin and the meth, but everything else was game.
So was it readily available? And you got to educate me a little bit on West Coast drug trade when it comes to that.
Sure.
Those things were around here. They were certainly available. They weren't readily available. Marijuana, of course, readily available everywhere. Heroin, so. Cocaine was around.
Mm-hmm.
But, those other drugs, they were harder to find. The psychedelics were hard to find.
Yeah, I guess maybe just Los Angeles being such a metropolitan, with such a
Dawn of the hippie movement.
It was it was everywhere. And so like the Pacific Palisades is an upper middle class, almost pretty much wealthy neighborhood. And so a lot of kids there had money. So,
well, that's the big mistake a lot of parents make. They're in a bad school district, so they try to send their kids to private school. Well, what is one thing private school people have? They got money. So all the dealers who are smart will go and sell to them because they can buy it. Yeah, it's a mistake of parents. Hence my kids are going to public school.
Yeah, I think we're looking to have kids here, and I think we're probably going to do some kind of like co-op kind of home kind of thing. Just
I know they can accelerate quicker with that stuff. I have a little bit of experience. I know some friends of mine that homeschool their kids, and they're able to accelerate them at a much quicker level. But the problem I see with that co-op, that homeschool stuff, is the socialization.
mm-hmm.
That's the problem I see. The ones they're not all of them, but some of them, they're a little socially awkward. And that's, your father got you involved in all that stuff. Would you go down that same path with your kids?
Not sure. It's definitely something I'd have to look into a lot more. But it's just, I know everything. It's probably a little bit of what I experienced personally growing up through just, the different schools and the environments and the groups of people that I were around that really played such a heavy influence in my life.
Well, do you remember the first time that what did you do first? Did you take a sip of alcohol or did you smoke marijuana first?
I was sipped alcohol and smoked cigarettes before I smoked weed.
And what was the thinking behind it? Was there just a group of kids doing it?
Yeah, it was the close group of guys that were friends. Most of them had older siblings that they would get, their weed from and stuff like that. And so it was just to be part of that cool group of kids. Oddly enough, it was the same group of guys that were in the Boy Scouts with me. I was in the Boy Scouts. So I actually did eventually get my Eagle Scout. So, but yeah, it was just this group of guys that I wanted to be part of.
On paper so far, up until minus out the drugs and alcohol, on paper so far, you're on a collision course with some sort of success in your future. You have everything there. You have all the tools, but sometimes the tools aren't enough. You have to have it inside of you to get there. So you escalated. When you were in high school, what was your favorite thing to do?
I skateboarded a lot as a kid. So I skateboarded from when I was, through those years when I was younger, all the way up into high school. But I also played sports. So in high school, I was playing football. Did pretty good. Sophomore, junior year was getting pretty good. Actually, even went to like a running coach, and was prospecting. And then the coach wanted me to play a position that I didn't want to play. So I had the smart guy I was like, I'm not going to play anymore if I'm not going to play the position I want to play. So, that's where probably some of the self-sabotage really came into effect there. And then I was started to, a couple of buddies that I had known from middle school up and through high school. Like you said, there's a mix of kids going from one neighborhood to another neighborhood. And so I started hanging out. I had some friends that were in like the Rampart district area in LA. So it was a little bit different than the Pacific Palisades. And
a little culture shock.
Yeah, well, I got along just fine with them. I was just about like one of the only white guy that was in the neighborhood there. But so it was just by that time things were getting serious. It went from being when I was a younger teenager to just having the little crew. But then once you got into high school, guys then were like getting from gangs and stuff like that. And some of the gangs there, mid-city Los Angeles were pretty heavy.
They're pretty serious.
Yeah, pretty serious stuff.
Now, this whole time you're going down this downward spiral.
Mm-hmm.
Your parents, what's going on with them? Are they losing their minds, trying to get you help?
I think I was 13, 14, something like that. Mother had met a guy. He was a professor at UCLA, had started a lot of the orthodontics department there. She was in that field of work prior. That's what she was doing when they had met. So once they got divorced, she got back into the field, and they had met. He had asked her to marry her, and she came and asked me about my opinion, and I had asked, okay, well, does he make you happy? She said yes. I said, okay. I said, is this what you want to do? She said yes. I said, okay, well, I support it. So they got married. It was a little bit of a red flag to me. They said they were going to get married in Greece. I said, okay, well, when are we going to Greece? And she was like, oh, well, just me and him are going to go. You and Angelo aren't going to go. Okay. So that was kind of a red flag and a sign of things to come. So at that point in time, after they did get married, he was retiring and he was in the Navy Reserves. So he wanted to retire in Coronado. So they were moving to Coronado. I went down there initially and I didn't really fit in too much in Coronado.
It's a nice place, though.
Very nice place.
It's a very nice place.
Very nice place. And so me being the little skater, punk kid, whatever, wasn't really as acceptable as it is today back then. So my father was living with his girlfriend at the time, who was actually the girlfriend he had been with since my parents split up. They said that I could move in with them. So I moved in with them. I was there for a couple of years. Things didn't really work too much. I would be gone over the weekend, come back Monday, and that's, I'd be at friends' houses where we were just partying and doing all that stuff. So it was a couple of years, and then it was like, hey, you need to do better. I was really trying, in my opinion. They said, if you're not doing better, you're going to have to move out when you're 18. So when I was 17, I had an opportunity to move out. A girl that I was dating at the time, one of her neighbors was like, hey, if you pick up my kid from school, help him with his homework, you can stay in an extra room here. Okay. So I took advantage of it before I turned 18, didn't have anywhere to go.
There was it ever heavy-handed with your father or your mother saying, "Hey, listen, get your shit together"?
I think it was, when father had left and I was with mom, she was really doing everything she could to make sure we were okay. So I think at that point in time is kind of when it was like, really being tough on us was hard for her because my father wasn't around.
The divorced parent syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I was with my father, like he wanted to be there. I mean, we had a very close relationship. We used to, when I was playing football, we'd get up early before school and go hit the gym, go work out. Some of the fondest memories I have of me and my father is, going and hitting the gym in the morning before school. He would also go with me when I was in the Boy Scouts. We had gone down to Mexico. Like, he was always been present. He's been at all of my games. So we have a very close relationship. But when I was living with him, I just would always want to be gone. And I was at friends' houses where their parents lived in Topanga Canyon, which is where a lot of those parents were like the hippies of LA. When they moved out from the 60s, they went up into Topanga Canyon.
Okay.
So I used to spend a lot of time in Topanga Canyon.
A lot of freedom out there, I'm assuming.
A lot of freedom, yeah.
I'm looking at this, and I guess what I'm doing is I'm trying to dive deep and find out how a child with such opportunity loses it when the parents, and there's nothing there that says why this is happening other than you're using it as an excuse that your parents left. And by that, it's enough. That's enough. But there's no markers. It's not like you were abused, sexually or physically.
No.
It sounds like you were a good athlete, probably popular because you were a good athlete. You have the personality to do it. So I'm looking for that one thing. It's like, oh, that's it. And other than the divorce, there's nothing there. It's just, was this your path? Was this your path that you needed to roam down?
Well, I know today it was the test. It was the journey God had me, the cross that I've carried, so I can do what I'm doing today, share and help other people with everything that I've been through. But it's always been my addiction. Really, had me around certain people, had me in certain places, doing certain things. That
were you looking for something? Just companionship with a friend. Some people have that. The key component to any law enforcement officer being the best version of themselves is through education. Sherrie Allsup is a leader in providing that education to police agencies, preparing them for the all too frequent dealings with sexual assault victims.
You've seen Sherrie on episode 169 of the Suffering Podcast. She survived incest and almost daily sexual assault, so she comes from a place of experience and true understanding.
Sherrie has the intelligence, commitment, and compassion to open the eyes of those on the front lines, while providing the tools to effectively deal with a difficult situation. Sherrie's instruction comes from experience and multiple certifications.
Training with Sherrie will offer on-site training, customized schedules, specialized instruction tailored from a victim's perspective.
You are going to hear Sherrie's heart-wrenching but inspiring survivor story. Learn proprietary trauma-informed training techniques. Uncovered victim-centered interview methods while earning continuing education credits according to your state guidelines. To be the best, you must learn from the best. Let Sherrie also guide you through the delicate cases of sexual assault from a victim's point of view.
Be a source of comfort to those victims affected by these traumatic experiences while producing a solid investigation and uncovering details that often go unnoticed.
To find out more or to contact Sherrie Allsup, go to SherrieAllsup.com. That's SherrieAllsup.com.
The friends was a big thing. Then when I was out on my own, I was with a girlfriend, and a couple of my buddies were getting in really serious trouble here in town or in Los Angeles. One of my buddies was then on the FBI's most wanted, for a lot of homicides. He was on there with Whitey Bulger, and So I was just like, I wanted to leave, get out of California. And so I got out of California, kind of hoping to go to school. I went to Arizona. I was in Tucson to try and buckle down and get into school.
Change of venue might change your way of thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I found myself out there and wasn't going to school, was still just trying to survive, was selling a little bit of weed, had picked up a small job doing, I think it was timeshare, stuff like that, and was just spinning my wheels, wasn't really getting anywhere. Again, my addiction was heavy, was doing a lot of cocaine.
And what ages are you right now?
At that point in time, I was 19, 20. I was 20, 21.
Mm-hmm. So it's time for you to start getting your life together, but you're sort of just kind of lost in the desert.
100%.
Yeah. So how bad did it get?
Got pretty bad. Was at that point in time, I was one incident that I still suffer from today. Was at a party, a little housing complex, college party. I had been drinking a lot, and one of my buddies gave me my keys back. We went to go leave, and so on our way back to my place, was speeding and hit a little pedestrian curb island. Floorboard came up flat with the car, shattered my right foot, broke my left foot. I was the only person that got injured, thank God. But totally just destroyed my right foot. I mean, I still suffer. I walk with a limp. I got like 2 plates, 24 screws in my foot. So, I mean, that's something that I carry from a silly thing that I did when I was in college. So that happened then. I moved out of Arizona at that point in time, a little while after I recovered. Went to Austin, Texas. Was in Austin, Texas again to kind of get back into school. Again, didn't get back into school. I just found myself working. I started working for a sales company. It was a fundraising company. I started actually doing very well. I was only there for like a few weeks. They asked me to be in management. I started managing a section of the office. Then I started managing a larger section. Then I was managing the whole office there for a few years.
While you're in the throes of addiction.
While I was in the throes of addiction.
So you're a true functioning addict at this point.
Yeah, that was the biggest problem.
Yeah, and you were probably successful, if I had to guess.
I was okay. I was okay. I mean, I definitely wasn't. I didn't have a lot of materials, but I was getting by. There was a lot of struggles though. There were struggles. There was times where through these travels and everything, my mother would actually help me out. There was one time I fell on some hard times, and she helped me get into another apartment. So I wasn't having a lot of success, but I was just barely able to keep the thing going.
So your parents always stayed present, right? They were always somehow, you were in contact with them. You never left contact with them at all?
Yeah, I've always had contact with them.
So I was, this is one of the things that I'm not very proud of in my life. So there was a kid, and I was probably 22, 23, and he's fatherless. He's about 16 or 17. And so I would take him to the gym with me, we'd work out, sort of just give him a little bit of mentorship a little bit. And so I move on with my life, and he moves on with his life, and we sort of just lose contact. Well, one day I come into work, and they say, hey, this kid's asking for you, and they say the name, and I'm like, what's he want? I haven't talked to him in years. Well, he said he knows you. Turns out the kid got hooked on heroin, right? And so I call his mother, and his mother said, yeah, I had to move, and I couldn't tell him where I was, because when he was living with me, I had to sleep on my purse because he was stealing money. It was just, it was heartbreaking to me. But I remember grabbing this kid, and I grabbed him by his collars, and I said, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, what are you doing? And I was so mad at him. I said, if you're going to continue to do this shit, don't mention my name ever. But it was something, I was really hurt when I lost that kid. Like, he's back now. He's back, but he did prison time. He was sexually assaulted in prison. He had to go through some trials and troubles. And I'm saying that because your parents are losing you, and it's got to be eating them alive. It's that pain that only a parent can feel when they're trying so hard, and they just don't know what to do. Pretty much it's the time to throw your hands up and say, I don't know what else to do. Tell me some of the things that they tried other than your mom helping you out financially.
It got worse. It got a lot worse. So it was at that point, about 2007. I was supposed to, this sales company I was working for, they were going to open an office in LA. I was supposed to go back, open that office. They ended up giving it to one of their family, one of the owner's family, somebody. So they wanted me to go to Modesto. I was like, I'm not going to Modesto. So went to San Diego. My brother had started a construction company, had been gone from family for a while. So I went to San Diego, jumped on board with the construction company, kind of helped get that to grow. And then and we were partying a lot. We were doing a lot of cocaine, stuff like that, spending a lot of money because we were making a good amount of money with a construction company.
Young kid with money. Oof. It's a horrible mixture.
If I just had some of that money.
And living that close to Tijuana don't help either.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we would go everywhere though. I mean, we'd be L.A., San Diego, Vegas, we'd go all over the place. At that point in time, I still hadn't gotten in trouble.
Never been arrested.
I think I had a refusal for a DUI.
Okay.
That was about it. Then 26, and we were up in LA. We had gotten to LA. My father was actually he was a super on a custom spec house that some investment developing was going on in like Bel Air, Brentwood area.
High end.
I think we ended up working on a bunch of these houses. Smallest one was like 9,000 square feet. The largest one was like 19,000 square feet. All custom spec stuff.
And for those of you who don't know Brentwood, it's where O.J. Simpson lived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did Bel Air, Brentwood.
And that's where Will Smith lived, right?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I saw the TV show.
So things were going really good. I had gotten connected with a girlfriend that I had known from high school who turned out to be just absolutely cuckoo. And so she had attacked me one night, and I ended up getting in trouble for it. Long story short, I had bite marks all over me. Me not knowing the system, took a deal which made me a felon and was the worst mistake I ever made. If I had known what I know today, I would have just taken it all the way to trial. They would have dropped it. They would have gotten tossed out. I mean, it was just she was lying in her testimony, all sorts of stuff. So,
but you just want it over with.
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't bail out. I was in there, so I was fighting it for like 3 or 4 months. And at that point in time, they were like, "Oh, if you just take this, you can get out now." And so I was like, "Okay," I took it. Made me a felon. Worst mistake I ever made.
So now you got that stamp on you.
Got the stamp. Got out, did the 52-week anger management thing, getting ready to complete probation. And at that point in time, I was just about 30 years old and had the wonderful idea of the neighborhood I was in. There was a couple of guys and decided to smoke meth.
Ooh.
And
at 30 years old, you decide to take up meth. Okay.
Yeah, there was problems. Me and my brother weren't getting along. We had been butting heads. His girlfriend at the time really caused a lot of problems between us. Things were just not going very good for me. My father was just looking to remarry with somebody, and I was just pretty much on my own there in Los Angeles, and was just this group of guys. And I was like, "Oh, I'll just do this. It's not a big deal. I'll just do this time. It's not, that's not a big deal." And then it just hit me. And then it was the next day I was there. The next day I was there, and that's really when it started to go downhill.
Meth is one of those drugs that if you ever look up those faces of meth online,
man.
Just it destroys people. It makes them into walking zombies, like living zombies. It's one of those drugs that people. From what I heard, I don't have any experience with meth, but it's like one time, and that's what it sounds like. One time, and this is where you've been all my life.
Yeah, it was. So it just was off and running. But I still, was working. I was actually working for an HVAC company at that point in time. Was friends. My father's friend owned the company, and they could just tell something was up. And they were like, "Hey, you need to go get help, or you don't have a job." And I was like, "Well, what? I haven't missed work. I've never been late. Like, what are you talking about?" They were like, "Yeah, that's that's the ultimatum. And I said, well, I guess I don't have a job anymore.
Hmm.
So then went to jobless. Then next thing you know, I'm on the street.
You're living out on the street.
And then at that point, and then I was out living on the street. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yep. And so just committing crime to support my basic human needs. And it just started getting way out of hand. It was
What kind of crime are you looking at?
just petty stuff around the neighborhood, or I was, stealing from stores, stealing cars, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff.
Anything violent? Anything where people got assaulted?
No,
Okay.
no violence. Everything was just money driven to support my addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Then ended up, I guess, being on some sort of list for LAPD's Pacific Division. And so found that out one day. They came knocking. This was actually before. So my father was living in an apartment in the neighborhood. I would stay there, and came knocking on the door talking about a noise complaint. And so I'm on probation. So I'm just saying, oh yeah, you can leave. They'd want to leave a card. I said, okay, leave the card on the door. He said, no, we have to give it to you. I said, oh, I just was in the shower. You just slide it on the door. Oh, well, we got to go. And I said, oh, yeah, well, I got stuff to do too. And I knew I had to comply. So eventually I had opened the door. I was in the shower. I had some boxers, some white polo boxers on. That was it. So I cracked the door for them to hand me the card. And they said, oh, you got some clothes on? I said, yeah. So at that point, I kind of opened it to about a foot. And at that point, the one officer by the door was like, good, because we got a warrant, and threw his shoulder into the door. And so I threw my shoulder into the door, started closing on him because I'm high on meth, but the bottom's bowing out, and I looked down, his boots on the inside of the threshold, and I was like, okay. So at that point, I just let go of the door, turned, booked it through the house, and there was a patio there, and so I just decided to Superman off the patio, which was like a 6-8 foot drop into into a planter. Ooh. Next thing you know, I'm up on my feet, and I'm running down the street just in my boxers in broad daylight. People everywhere looking at me, and just madness. Ended up getting away, and there was another foot pursuit a couple of days later by.
Now you're on the radar.
Oh yeah. They were already had pictures of me in the car, me and a buddy of mine that were going around doing dumb stuff in the neighborhood. So a couple of days later, they had found me over by like La Cienega and Venice Boulevard. It's major streets over there. Took them on a foot pursuit there. Got away from them with that. The helicopter was involved. Just absolute madness. Finally, they'd catch up to me. They caught me one time. I went to go visit my father. I'd fallen asleep there and woke up, and they had the place surrounded. So they got me that time. But it was just in and out, do some time, get out, fall right back into my addiction. This was pretty consistent through my 30s. One time, the judge finally maxed me out. I had a joint suspension, and he was like, if I see you again, I'm going to give you your max term. So sure enough, I was back there less than a month later. And so I'm in LA County Jail. This was 2014. It was a Sunday, and I'm at a Medium South facility out at Pitches Detention Center at Wayside. And they tell me to go to the booth. I was like, well, there's no movement on a Sunday. What's going on? So I go out to the booth, and like, yeah, you need to contact home. Okay. So I call my father, and then that's when he tells me my brother Angelo is dead. And so that was...
From what?
So with our construction company, one of the supervisors of ours, he had gotten into it with him. Work was slow, so he'd asked him to take some time off. He owed the guy petty amount of money. I've heard anywhere from $500. I've heard all the way to $2,000.
Still not enough.
Absolutely not. No amount is enough for both families to lose what ended up happening. So, it turned out he knew where we had lived, and the guy just pulled up one day and just got out and started unloading, started firing on him, and died that day.
Holy cow.
So that was tough. I didn't get out until about a year and a half after that.
So you're inside and you miss your brother's funeral.
Yep.
I'm seeing some things here. I'm seeing there's been some warning shots being shot over your bow consistently throughout your life up until this point. All right. You're in the DUI crash. The floorboard comes up, cracks your leg. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That has to do with doing something you're not supposed to do. You fall head deep into this addiction with meth, and somebody who gives you a job sees a problem, says, hey, listen, all you got to do is go get some help and you got a job. If you don't do that, you don't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you choose the latter of the two. You're inside, you're in and out, you're homeless at one point. You're stealing, you're doing the cops come break down your door. You're on these foot pursuits and you get away. And now your brother dies.
Mm-hmm.
And you're inside and you can't even pay your last respects.
Yeah, so we went through, because there's possibilities that people can get approved to go to these things. So initially the judge reviewed my stuff. Initially it was a no. We pursued it and it turned into a yes. Then it was getting okayed. It got all the way to where we pay for the transportation costs and everything. And then it turned out, since my brother, we had moved the body from LA to San Diego, there was going to be a wake in LA, but there wasn't going to be a body present. The body was in San Diego. And then since it turned out that there was no physical body present, I could not go.
Oh, man.
And so, yeah, it was a pretty emotional roller coaster of no, yes, no, yes.
Meanwhile, you're detoxing constantly. You're up and down. Because when you go inside, well, unless you can get it inside, I know you can.
Always stayed clean when I was inside.
So, but what was detox off of meth like?
I just would sleep. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
I did pretty okay. That's where I got a lot of my discipline from, was doing time, being in there. A lot of the places, since the first charge that I had was what it was, it made me a high security level. So when I would get locked up, I'd go to like LA County Supermax at Wayside, and I'd be housed in like the 800s, and there a lot of people are fighting all day. They're fighting life, and so it's a lot of serious people in there. And so I just would be very aware of, I was raised with manners, so everything's all about, respect, manners, that's everything in there at certain levels,
Mm-hmm.
So I really learned to run a really good program in there, be just respectful, disciplined, up early, doing workouts, et cetera. So that's always how I had done my time. I'd actually had found myself in a lot of positions of responsibility in there when I was doing time.
So was that the final moment where you said, what am I doing here? I gotta make a change. Like, I really got to make a change, and I got to have the discipline to see it through. Or did you continue to go?
Unfortunately not. I thought that would have been the time. I did get out, and at that point I was off probation, and so I was able to leave LA County, and so it was set up for me to go to San Diego. I would come on board and help out with the restaurants that my mother and her husband had opened up in San Diego. They'd opened a restaurant still there in Coronado. So the plan was for me to go there, help them with the restaurants. Got out, came to San Diego, started working at the restaurants. And within a few weeks, there were the manager that was there. There was a few people that kind of didn't want me there for whatever reason it was. And so they had conspired a couple of things, and that was all that my mother's husband needed to kind of be like, oh yeah, no, you're not, this isn't, I don't think I was ever really had that support at that point in time. So it was just a good reason to be like, okay, you're done. So then I was in San Diego, I had an apartment, had a car, but then had no job. And so I resorted to old habits, got high, and then just started selling some meth. And I took another couple of times. I got in trouble a couple more times. Was in San Diego. And the last time I got in trouble was October 5th, 2018. I was in a stolen car. I was going into San Diego, downtown San Diego. And next thing you know, there's a swarm of cop cars, and they're all headed my direction. So I take them on a high-speed pursuit through downtown on Friday at 5 p.m.
Ooh.
Thank God Nobody was hit or anything. Being able to get onto the freeway. Somebody comes into me and I get pops my tire. I get off, and so I go and I'm hopping fences, and I ended up under a crawl space under a house. They end up finding me, thank God. I'm thankful for that day today. That's my sobriety date, October 5th, 2018, just went by. But at that point in time, so then I end up I'm locked back up, San Diego jail, and it's my brother's birthday is the 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November. And so his birthday was coming up, and the holidays were coming up again. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I'd gone to church service there at the jail, and there was a guy there who was really on fire. I mean, he was like, his name was Paul, believe it or not. And I think he was part of a church in San Diego, and it was moving. I actually like broke down. I literally broke down. I hadn't broke down since my brother had passed, and before that, I don't think I'd ever really broken down since maybe my parents or something like that. So that was pretty major. And
did you surrender at this point?
I did.
Yeah,
I did. I surrendered, and I was like, that's what I was saying. I was thinking at that point in time, I'm like, how many of these holiday seasons? I've said it a few times now. It was like I started counting. It was like 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5. I could have kept counting, but I just didn't want to. I was like, I don't want to count. I don't want to know how many. And so that was it. I surrendered. I was like, I just started talking to God every morning. I'd be up super early in my cell, and I'd be sitting there just talking to God, because I believe that's what it's all about, is just having a relationship with God.
God was always listening.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, God was always listening.
Oh, yeah.
You were just talking to, you weren't listening back.
No, my ears were open. Like Jesus said, those who have ears, let them hear. And so I was listening at that point in time. And
ears to hear and eyes to see and a heart to love.
Absolutely.
That's what it is. That's what it is. And once they're opened, it's like you start asking yourself, how did this happen? You at this point, how old are you when you're in jail?
36. At this point, 36.
You're 36 years old, so it took you 36 years old to finally figure out how your ears work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it takes one of the worst events that most people would see as being horrible. I got arrested. That's your event, right? That's a horrible event, but it's what finally shook you out of that stream that you couldn't somehow get yourself out of. Something had to pull you out. Yeah. And thankfully it was something.
It was. And at that point, was looking, because I have criminal history. And so with the charges I had, was definitely looking at a prison term. And so I was just really talking with God all the time. And I had surrendered, and I was going to court. I was on a court bus, and I was talking to God. I'm like, God, just, give me a program, and let's do it. I'll run it. I know how to do a program. I'd been given programs before, wasn't successful. I was like, God, give me a program. I'm all in. Let's go. I was like, give me some sort of sign, God. And so at that point, we passed a church. I was like, okay.
All right.
Okay.
Message received.
I was like, well, you know what, God, I need another sign. So since my brother passed, I've always seen him in crows. There's a thing with him and crows, another buddy that passed before him. And so sure enough, we passed another church, and the second church we passed with the cross on top, there's a crow on it. I said, okay, God, roger that. Let's run it.
I got you.
So went to court. Judge, there was not a deal on the table for a program. He was like, hey, you know what? I feel like I want to offer this guy a program. Okay, that's it. Took the program, crushing it, fast tracking to be a house manager at this residential drug program, volunteering for everything. I'd seen how people had done it before, how they were successful, checking all the boxes. Bam, 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 bam. Less than 30 days away from graduating, and they tell me I have a visitor. It's the middle of the week. I don't have visitors in the middle of the week. I look up, and I see a bunch of black vehicles. Not good. And then a guy comes walking down with a badge around his neck. I'm like, okay, well, I haven't done anything. I've been a good boy. Turns out he's a U.S. Marshal, and says they have a federal warrant for me. So turns out something I had done in my madness a few years prior, they came up with an indictment for me for, which turned out to be a petty distribution charge, just over the mandatory minimum. But however, it is what it was. I take full responsibility for it, and it was a tough pill to swallow. But I know that we play for two teams. There's two teams to play for, and I had started playing for the good guys, and so the enemy wasn't happy about that and tried to throw something my way to get me to veer off and backtrack. Not having it, so I took accountability for it. They gave me 77 months for it. It was just over 2 ounces, 77 months.
Wow.
And just did that. And really, I knew what it was like to run a program, how to be disciplined, how to manage my time correctly.
So now you're doing 77 months in a federal pen.
Correct.
Okay.
So it was a long transition to get there. I was housed in Orange County Jail for a while. I ran one of the facilities there. One of the guys today who's on my team was actually in that facility. I had kind of gave him like an NA Living Clean book because I saw the kid had potential, but he found me recently and was like, "Hey, I'm sober now." Now he's part owner of a tattoo shop. His dad's sober. He's crushing life. He's on my team now, and which is a great story of how we're affecting other people. But so anyway, so I get into the feds and I start doing this time, and I just was going to make the most of the time. No time wasted. From the moment I roll off my rack at, I don't know, anywhere from 3 to 4 a.m., I'm up, I'm reading my Bible, I'm reading some other, some wisdom, kind of the history book. I'm doing my workouts all before the door opens at 6:30, and then my time's all blocked. I got a degree through correspondence, college degree. I took numerous classes, educated myself on numerous topics, did a lot for restaurant management because the plan was for me to come back and help out with restaurants when I got out.
Well, the funny thing is everybody says, I'd love to do X, but I don't have the time, right? You'll hear that over and over again. It's one of the greatest excuses that's ever been said. Where you're sitting in prison, you have the time, and it's your choice. Where now, actually, you have a choice of what to do with your time. Very few people have that freeing experience. I don't suggest you do it in prison, but very few people have that freeing experience to actually have the time to do those things they want to do. But you're doing it without the freedom,
Right.
behind closed doors. But I imagine that made your time a little bit easier.
I was free as a bird in there.
Yeah.
Free as a bird in there. I did something recently that was pretty controversial. I put a reel out and I said, well, maybe everybody or some people might need to go to prison.
I don't disagree with you. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't disagree with you. I am the worst person in the world with enclosed spaces. When I went to rehab the day after Thanksgiving, 2013. That's my sobriety date.
Nice.
The minute I walked in that door, and they strip search me, and I bend over and spread them and do all that stuff. It's about as sober as I was ever going to be. And I'll never forget the feeling. I'm like, I am not, like, that was it for me. I'm not doing this anymore. Not today. I'm not doing this anymore. So I don't disagree with you. It took me one time, took you multiple times, but hey, listen, the learning curve is there.
I'm special.
Yeah. The learning, you're just an overachiever. That's all it is.
Right.
But I don't disagree with you. Just if
Right.
everybody feels it.
And there's other venues, I threw that out there because that's my experience, what I've been through. I've had a lot of negative comments come back like, oh, well, not prison, it's like, but like military, for example, is a better alternative.
Yeah.
I don't support anybody committing crime. So it's like, it'd be nice. Some people I think need the experience of that kind of environment. It'd be good if they didn't have to commit a crime to go there or something like that. But just a real structured, environment where, people are away from where they lose. I mean, we have access to so much out here. We have it so easy out here. People really don't understand how easy it is out here. Once I lost my freedom of choice on everything, did it really.
That's what happened. That was my rehab experience. I all of a sudden lost the ability to tuck my kids in bed at night, to say goodnight to my wife.
Right.
I lost that ability. Now, it was self-imposed, so it's a little bit different, but it was enough for me to say, this is where my life is heading if I don't get this shit under control. And it was enough for me to get everything under control, and I was okay with that. You've had so many ups and downs, though, that what makes you think that this new way is the way? You're still in prison. While you're still in prison, there's got to be some. Is there any doubt in your mind, or is this is it?
No, this was it. When by the time the feds had hit me, I had almost a year clean, and so things. It builds. The first year is the hardest. First 30 days is the toughest. And so once I had gotten to about right before the feds had hit me, I was getting a lot of support. I was repairing a lot of relationships with family and loved ones. And so once I got to a certain point where I have so much of this good, it's hard to take that risk and just give it all up to get high or whatever it may be. So at that point, I had enough of a balance to, I'm not going back. I'd seen what I was capable of, and I got a taste of it, and I just was like, you know what? It was God, man. It really was. I had my relationship with him was solid. We had communicated, and it was just like I gave him my word, and that was it, man. Like I don't care. Like I'm not. Till the good Lord calls me home, man. I'm on a mission.
Now your release date is coming while you're in prison, and it seems like your pattern has been go to jail, get clean, come out, relapse.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a fear?
Absolutely not.
And what kept you strong knowing that when you got out? Like, what did you do to make sure that relapse didn't happen? The Suffering Podcast welcomes our newest sponsor, KetaRevive. Ketamine infusions that are personalized, accessible, and holistic. Proven treatments for post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, chronic pain, neuropathic pain, and so much more. KetaRevive is physician-operated with customized treatments tailored to you and an outstanding support system. KetaRevive offers first responder special discounts. So try something new. Proven treatments. Located in Wyckoff, New Jersey. To find out more, visit KetaRevive at KetaRevive.com. Let's start healing today.
So one of the stipulations of my term was to do RDAP, which is a residential drug abuse program, which is an in-custody 9-month program where it's a separate housing unit. It's not separate like any kind of special housing. It's just it's on the yard. It's on the regular yard. It's just a house. It's like an educational unit. So they gave me a year off my sentence to do that program, and then there's like a 4-month aftercare once you're released. So, but I've always been, I've just had been on the path and was just bettering myself the entire time, being super disciplined, et cetera, et cetera. When it came time for this program, I was just really dialed in. And so there was a few DTSs, which were the drug treatment specialists, people that worked the unit, that were the counselors for these programs, these classes that we would do. They'd be like CBT classes, all sorts of stuff like that. So by the time the program came around, they'd actually asked me to be a mentor for the program. So I jumped on top of it, and just accelerated. I actually blew through a lot of the work, but a lot of it I took it real serious and really dived into it and really soaked up a lot of the knowledge. I just knew I was done. Somebody only knows they're done when they're done, and I was just done. So really, I had found out about Jocko a little prior to that, so I was really pumping Jocko tough. I'm in this unit, and I'm a mentor, so I'd be up in front of a whole unit of like 100 guys in a prison unit, and we'd have a morning meeting, and there would be a class, and I'd be up at the podium reading Discipline Equals Freedom to all these guys, like trying to get these guys to step their game up.
That needs to be in every leadership school across the country. When I read extreme ownership.
Solid.
It was crazy. But so in the gym, I'll put my earbuds in, and everybody thinks I'm listening to music. And there's some times when I do, but it's very, very rare. What I listen to, and I type it in on YouTube, put in Jocko motivation. That's all you got to put in.
Oh yeah.
And it's just snippets of his speeches and stuff, and that's what keeps me moving through my workout. Because I'm like this, and because he's vulnerable when he says it. He says, listen, there's days I just don't have it. There's days I don't feel like it, but that's the days that I got to do it. The Navy SEAL that was sitting in here, John Collins, he said, when you don't want to train, that is when training starts. And I took that lesson from him. I'm taking a lot of lessons from you on this one. Like don't do meth. That's the first lesson. But now you're out. Your release date. When was your release date?
July 12th, 23.
So you're fresh. You're fresh out, and you got your wife out here. How did that happen?
So I'd been pumping Jocko tough. I mean, I literally would write Discipline Equals Freedom out longhand and send these to like my older brother, Danny, for example, who's a big guy, a little overweight. And so he knows how hard I'm going. His daughter, my niece, has fallen through some of the similar issues that I have. And so I'd be trying to encourage them to really just get on the path, as Jocko calls it. And so I get released, and Danny knows of the change I've made, and so these are just some of these wins that are starting to happen. He says, I want to take you over to this gym. His buddy he went to school with has backed this gym. Takes me over, and it's Victory MMA, which is Jocko's gym. And so
it's a good gym to start working out in.
Yeah. Somebody's looking out for me.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So get there. They kind of hear my story. Jocko wasn't there. It was gentleman who backed everything, another guy who's another part owner who's also the manager. He was there. He's had some stuff in his past. He had done some time. And so they welcomed me into the gym, comped me, full membership, everything, welcoming arms. So I'm there. A couple times I've been there, and I've seen a guy that I know, Dean Lister, who's a world.
Yeah, I know who Dean Lister is, of course.
Yeah, so I know Dean from San Diego previous years, just kind of in the San Diego scene. So I'm up in there, and I see Dean, and he sees me, and he just like walks up. He's like, "Where have you been?" Like, so I started talking to him a little bit, and him and Jocko are real good friends. And so next thing you know, Jocko comes walking up to me, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" I was like, "Sir," I was like, "I have to tell you something."
A little starstruck.
A little bit. Well, just is he? I mean, where I grew up. I mean, I used to deliver food to Kobe Bryant. I mean, like I know a lot of celebrity kids. I mean, like. But this guy has been so impactful on my life. The lessons I've learned from him literally helped change the whole trajectory of my life. I mean, I was already on the path, but it's like then getting everything he was talking about was just like kicking into overdrive.
Imagine what that did for Jocko. Now, Jocko gets a lot of accolades. He's a very well-rounded, he's like an anti-celebrity. I don't even want to call him a celebrity because he puts in the work. I think most celebrities don't,
right.
But he's like the anti-celebrity. So, again, it's that one person that we started off this whole thing with. You tell this to Jocko and how your life changed from inside, constantly just going inside out. And then you read his book, and it sort of changes the trajectory of your life. I'm sure for him, he put a big smile on his face.
He was pretty cool about it. I told him how impactful it was. I read all his books, and I said, well, check this out. Here's something you're going to get a kick out of. And I told him how I was up in front of a unit of a bunch of guys in prison reading his book to these guys, and he thought that was pretty cool. At that point, I had an ankle monitor on my leg because I'd gotten out. Usually it takes guys about 3 months to get house arrest. It only took me 3 weeks because I just was doing everything I was supposed to do. And so we had talked, we built a little bit of a friendship, and he's a sharp guy. A few months later, when it was that week to get the ankle monitor off, we had talked, we see each other all the time. Hey, how you doing? We chat and everything. I'm friends with his daughter and everything. But then the week, I hadn't mentioned anything about when it was coming off. And that very same week, because we'd see each other all the time, that week he said, hey, that's coming off this week, this Thursday, right? And I said, you're right. Yeah, he's a pretty solid individual, man.
And I know a couple other people who know him, maybe not in this capacity, and they all say the same thing. They all say the same thing, like he's the real deal.
Yeah.
Like there's no bullshit with him.
He's a good guy. He'll stop. He'll take his time. He'll talk to people. You know,
It's got to be exhausting for him because I'm pretty sure all he wants to do is go in there and work out.
Yeah, he's good. I mean, you know, you tell sometimes he's kind of, you know, having good times, but he's a wonderful individual. And I mean, that's one huge win. I mean, another thing that was, so when I was locked up and I was doing time, I identified a lot with a lot of guys that. A lot of like SEAL team guys. Like I read Adam Brown's book, you know, Fearless. That's an awesome story. I mean,
Fearless is a great book.
I mean, I really dug that a lot. And so I was getting out, I was like, you know, I'm going to be in San Diego. I'm going to be, you know, Mom was in Coronado. I mean, there's a whole lot of.
Yeah, there's a lot of SEALs, there. Yeah.
And so sure enough, you know, God really blessed me, you know, through a couple of people I know. I ended up meeting an individual who is a warrant officer, chief warrant officer, and we became friends. And he's taken me places, and I've had the opportunity to do certain things, you know. And it's just been, it's been great. It's been, I mean, they weren't even necessarily dreams. There were things that like I just thought would kind of be cool. I didn't think would even have come true. Like I started rolling, I started doing jiu-jitsu. I entered a couple of competitions. I wasn't even going to compete in one of them because I had a hernia repair that I had gotten in prison, and they wouldn't give me surgery for, but they were giving guys breast augmentations when I was in there. Whole nother story. And but so I decided to just do the competition, even though I was out of shape and I didn't do it. And I was like, I got to get uncomfortable. Somebody was like, just do it. You're always talking about, you know, doing the uncomfortable. So I went and did it, and actually won that competition. Registered for another competition, won that competition too.
My days of competitions are, I'm 50, man.
Oh, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah, I'm rolling with these young guys, and they just got the stamina, and I'm like, hey, listen, I work my ass off, but I know that I'm 50. Like that's you have to know what your capabilities and limitations.
Last competition, I had like 6 back ribs popped out of place and like 4 neck bones popped out of place. I'm not going to be competing anymore. But it was nice knowing like. Being prepared, I think, is the biggest thing. You know, I learned that in the Boy Scouts. You know, I'm an Eagle Scout, is like be prepared. And I think that's like one of the biggest tools to have. So, I mean, from the jiu-jitsu to that, to meeting these guys, to things, I mean, everything with federal probation was going great. I'm getting, they're putting me in the administrative phase, which is like the least restrictive phase of federal probation.
Like you had to get special permission to fly here, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but she grants me everything. Not a problem. Her and my wife communicate. You know, they're close friends. Or you know, but
well, if they need a reference, we'll send them the tape. So you were here, you're doing your thing, and you're actually talking truth. You're actually talking real. So you're out. You're in the last phase of this stuff. Your life's about to begin. Like at 42 years old, your life is about to begin, and it's in the phases of it's in the beginning phases. So what is next? I know you got Unchained Fit, your Instagram.
Yes, sir.
I love watching all this stuff. I was watching very closely when you got on the airplane today. I'm like, oh yeah, he's coming to see me. I love it. I love it.
I'm a student of discipline, and so a guy who I was at Victory. And a guy comes up to me and he says, hey, he's like, because I had been in the restaurant in Coronado, we had some meetings and stuff. So I had come on originally to help the restaurants, just kind of get into wherever I could help. So I'd actually moved in to just assisting, to then managing, got into running operations for all the locations. Then I just actually opened up a ghost kitchen for the restaurants. So every aspect of life is just really growing. So this guy sees me in the locker room one day. He's like, hey, you own or you're part of this restaurant in Coronado. And I was like, what? Like, I don't talk to anybody. I haven't really no social life at this point in time. So we started talking, and he gets to know me a little bit, gets to know my story. And he says, hey, man, he's like, who you are, what you're doing, the story you have, and how big you are in like fitness and all that stuff. He's like, guys are doing this online. And I was like, really? I hadn't even been on social media. When I got out, didn't even get on Facebook, nothing. You know, I was just focusing on my foundations and everything. So I checked it out just a few months ago, probably about 4 months ago now. And my buddy pushed me to do it. He said, hey, get on there and do it, man. And so I got on there and just started talking about putting my story out there a little bit, and just, I've always been a, people person, like wanting to help people and stuff like that. And it's like, I've just realized it's my true purpose today is to so I've started like a personal development company, helping guys with their mindset, just getting their stuff in line, helping them incorporate non-negotiable tasks, just daily disciplines, focusing on that. And then of course, tying in fitness and nutrition with it. I really think it's just, once I got myself completely dialed in spiritually, number one, mentally, intellectually, physically, I'm just, we're energy, we're balls of energy. And so I'm just, the energy we give off, the energy I give off, the frequency I give off, it's experience it. I go places, I'm treated a certain type of way, I'm treated with a certain amount of respect. And so I just really feel like I'm able to, I attracted, we met in the beginning of the year, met my wife, and she, first day we went on, I thought she was pretty serious. I was like, uh-oh, I don't know, she's pretty serious. But we met again because I knew there was really something to her. I was like, okay, there's something going. Her faith is number one. I knew that, and then I knew like her top things were similar to mine, and I was like, okay, there's something here. And so after like our second or third date, she started loosening up a little bit. Her name's Priscilla, and they actually call her Silly because she is pretty silly. So, and so after our first few dates, we dated, I think maybe a little over a month, and I proposed to her because I just knew she was the one. And so
when you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just as dialed in as I've been, like with myself, with God, and just everything just in the flow state, as Taylor likes to call it, I just knew exactly. And so
just don't do the metal teeth.
Yeah.
Just don't do the metal teeth like he has.
And I just, and she said yes. And, I got to go off on a tangent here because, we all, I come with history, and so, she's, it hasn't been a picture perfect thing, and so, but she's stood firm and she's had my back 100%. And Jocko actually said this one, he said it was a friend of his, and he said the most important decision we make in life is who we choose as a partner. And
I think that's wise words.
Absolutely.
It's wise words. It's also work.
Oh, yeah.
That's why they call it making love. All right, because love just doesn't happen. It's you don't meet, sparks fly, and everything just handles itself. In much the same way that you were born into with certain opportunities, it doesn't just happen.
Right.
It takes the work. It takes the discipline. If you're not willing to work at it, everything's going to crumble.
Right.
But sometimes the best things to do is to allow things to crumble beyond your control, so that way you can build this beautiful palace that you seem to have today. So why don't you throw us out some plugs? Where can my audience find you?
Find me on Instagram at unchained_fit. I've also just started a YouTube. It's uppercase GFC, God Family Country, GFC Autry. So the two places you can find me. You find me on Instagram. I'm always on there, super responsive there. Anybody reaches out, I respond to all my stuff myself. I do everything myself. Nothing's automated. I don't have everything's strictly 100% organic. It's all me. And got a good team of guys building so far. I've got a guy just the other day in Copenhagen, got guys in Denmark, got guys in Canada, Mexico, all over the U.S., just got all sorts of people reaching out from me. I've been speaking at rehabs. I'm talking with a rehab that's looking to incorporate my fitness and nutrition program there. There's
because when you develop that love for fitness, it's pretty hard to get high and then go work out. And that's the truth. Like that the gym is one of those healthy places of discipline, like we were talking about earlier.
Universal. It's universal application for everybody.
So, Anthony, we are coming to the end of this thing here, and I wrap up every show in much the same way. You, up until 38 years old, you lived this chaotic life that had tons of suffering, self-imposed,
100%.
but you had all this suffering. And now, looking at it through different eyes in 2024, it had to teach you something. And I'd really like to know what your suffering has taught you.
Things are going to happen in life that are out of our control. And I think taking accountability or responsibility is huge. One of the biggest things also that I've learned is forgiveness. Like, I've had to forgive myself for decisions I've made. And also, almost more importantly, I've had to learn to forgive others. I have forgiven the guy that murdered my brother. I forgive my parents. They did the best that they could. By learning forgiveness, it's enabled me to let go and find freedom, and enable me to take life to levels that I've never even dreamed imaginable. I mean, I see things that are going to happen that are beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, my wife's going to put in her 2-week notice. I mean, I just got her a new car, myself a new car. I mean, life is really taking off at an exponential rate because I learned to let go. The only person I can control is myself. And the biggest thing also is just to go, not to hesitate. The biggest thing is to take action. Just get after it. Just go. There's not, and if something happens, you fall, pick yourself up and dust yourself off and try again. But not taking action, once somebody hesitates, hesitation can be then infinite. So just go, man. Just get after it.
Thomas Edison once said that he developed 1,000 ways to not invent the light bulb before he actually invented the light bulb. Thank you so much for coming in tonight. This has been great.
Thank you.
This has been great. I'm going to have fun chopping this one up, too.
Appreciate it.
And that's going to do it for this episode of The Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of Discipline with Anthony Autry. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. Things are not always what they appear. Tools aren't useful unless you use them. There are warning shots that get shot over your bow. It's funny how thankful you are for some horrible events. Take accountability, but most importantly, you died. You rose again in lockdown so you can free others. And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com, put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount on your digital business card. Follow us on all social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Clapper, OnlyFans. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson, and of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.